It's like being awake in a dream, like watching a movie play out in my mind. Other lives, other versions of me, existing across the multiverse, transmitting a message, a broadcast. Do you remember? We're all eternal, stars wandering through infinity, on a quantum journey back to self. Are you ready? Are you ready?
You are listening to Wandering Star Podcast. This is episode 9, Insatiable Madness. If you are joining us for the first time, we are glad that you found us and thank you for being here. It is important to note that each episode certainly stands alone as a wonderfully profound story. However, if you would like to have a deeper experience, we invite you to listen to this podcast in order and allow yourself to join in the mystery as we follow the evolution of a single human being's soul to uncover the power and beauty that lies within each of us. Again, thank you for joining. Enjoy.
Resting on the grid, a unification, two souls integrated into one. The feeling of being home, the feeling of being whole, a stellar beacon. The magnetic pull awakens after some time. The brilliant unified light flies across the grid, then splits in two. The two lights shoot off in different directions. I am one half, wandering off into new expansion. A young boy sitting on a vast empty beach. Gentle waves lap upon the shore. The water, a deep sapphire blue, sparkles in the afternoon sun. I'm holding a stick in my hand, drawing in the light brown sand, around and around and around, a circle with a dot in the middle. I'm about 10 years old. Thick, jet black hair sweeps across my forehead. I brush a bead of sweat off my brow. I'm barefoot, wearing white shorts. They stick to my legs. The air is thick with moisture. Behind me, just beyond the beach, an elephant. Partly shaded by lush tropical trees, he patiently waits for me. I toss my stick on the beach and brush off my sandy legs. I pause and look out at the ocean, the endless indigo abyss. I turn and run towards the tree line. The elephant scoops me up with his trunk and plops me on his back. We walk through a tunnel of trees. I lay back and look up at the lush green canopy of leaves. The tunnel opens into a clearing. A grand villa sprawls out ahead. Bathed in shades of white and gold, arched columns line the edge of a tiled veranda. Manicured gardens surround the villa. Coconut palms, fragrant frangipani trees, orange hibiscus. A sensory delight. The rich thrumming of a sitar breezes through the air. My mom walks onto the veranda, her long dark hair wrapped in a sleek bun at the base of her neck. A red silk dress with gold and black embroidery flows behind her as she gracefully strides towards me. Her dark eyes twinkle with delight as she brushes sand off my head and tells me to go inside and get changed. I dutifully nod and run through the arched, breezy entrance into our luxurious home. A grand staircase cascades into a palatial foyer. White marble floors and high vaulted ceilings. Multicolored tapestries adorn the white walls. Tropical flowering plants breathe life into the room. To one side of the foyer is the dining room. A large arched window faces the sapphire sea. Satiny turquoise walls embedded with gold detailing. A long teak wooden table set for a large gathering. Gold and fuchsia teacups. Colorful silk napkins. Gold teaspoons. Seat cushions woven from a variety of textiles are placed in front of each table setting. An ornately carved wooden partition stands in the corner, and behind that, a door that leads to the kitchen. The piquant smell of spices drifts through the door. Ginger, cumin, curry, fresh chilies from the gardens. A symphony of flavors waiting to be devoured. Inside, the chef is making dinner. I try to swipe a piece of eggplant, but he swats my hand and raises a bushy eyebrow at me. I hear my mom calling my name. I plead the chef for just a tiny taste. The smells are intoxicating. My stomach is growling. He sneaks me a small piece of lamb and I savor its succulence. The door swings open. My mom marches in and gives me a stern look. She orders me to leave the chef alone and go get dressed right away. We have guests coming for dinner soon. I run up the marble staircase to my bedroom. My room is large and bright. A low wooden bed with tall, ornately carved posts. A dark blue and gold bed cover. Tiled mosaic floors. Large arched windows with sweeping views of the ocean. Laying on my bed, the clothes my mom picked out for me to wear. An emerald green tunic with gold embroidery and matching green pants. I dress quickly and run back downstairs, eager to eat. My dad is standing in the foyer, greeting our guests. He sees me racing down the stairs and beams at me with pride. He's a handsome man. High cheekbones, thick black hair, a perfectly manicured black mustache. His dark brown eyes dance with enthusiasm. He asks if I'm excited. I shrug with uncertainty. He ruffles my hair and leads me to the dining room. The long table is covered in mouth-watering platters of food. Chicken, vegetables, rice, lamb, an enticing feast. A myriad of aromas waft through the air. Tonight, a celebratory dinner in my honor. My aunts and uncles, cousins and grandparents have all come to say goodbye. Tomorrow I leave my beautiful home and move to France to go to boarding school. Everyone is carrying on about what an incredible opportunity this is for me. To make the family proud. I'm not so sure. I'm hesitant about this monumental change, but I don't have a choice. My parents are thrilled, boasting to everyone that I'm going to be a famous scientist someday. They're beaming. I don't want to disappoint them. I nod and smile, and politely ask if we may eat. My dad chuckles and passes me the eggplant, my favorite dish. A few months have passed. Tucked away in the rolling hills of the French countryside, an old stone building dominates the open fields. A large fenced-in courtyard surrounds it. The boarding school. Old and gloomy, it looks as though it must be haunted. The dark wood interior feels cold and rigid. The teachers here are strict, somber. None of them smile. Almost all the boys here are from France. I'm one of the only foreigners. Only one other boy is from a different country. His name is Lin. He's from China. He's my best friend, my only friend. I hate it here. I miss my home. I miss my family. I miss the sea and the sand, the lushness, the vitality. I really miss the food. The food here is bland and pale. It all tastes the same. Sometimes I think about my favorite dishes from home. My mouth waters at the thought of all the rich, layered flavors. Here we all wear the same boring clothes. Heavy dark blue suits with long ties, uncomfortable black shoes, gray sweatsuits when we play sports. I long to run barefoot along the beach, to be wild, to be free. Now every day is the same. There's nothing to do besides study. I get the best grades in all my classes. I don't even really need to try that hard. Sometimes Lynn and I work on science experiments for fun. The teachers let us use the lab whenever we want. I'm grateful to have him as my friend. Years pass. I'm 18 years old, sitting on my bed at the boarding school, crying, holding my head in my hands. Lynn sits beside me, offering comfort. I graduate today. It was supposed to be a joyful day. After 7 years away from home, I was finally going to see my parents. The headmaster called me to his office. I had a phone call. On the phone, my mom tearfully told me they weren't coming. My dad is sick, possibly dying. I begged her to let me come home to be with my dad. She told me no. She doesn't want me to be distracted from my studies. I need to stay in France and make my father proud. Heartbroken, I hung up without even getting to speak to my dad. I don't want to go to the dumb graduation now. What is the point? Nobody will cheer for me. I'll be the only boy with no family. I wonder if my parents even miss me, if they even love me, or if they just love the idea of having a son that's a prestigious scientist. I walk across the stage and get my diploma. Lynn and his parents cheer loudly. After graduation, I moved to a big city in France to go to university. I begin summer classes right away. Everyone in the city is very cosmopolitan. The women are all beautiful, with sleek haircuts, wearing designer clothes. The men are fashionable too, donning smart suits and driving fancy cars. I don't fit in here. I don't know how to be fashionable, but I don't care much either. I live in the center of the city at the university. I share a small dorm room with a roommate. I don't like him. He's arrogant and makes fun of me. He's a pretty boy. Chiseled cheekbones, floppy dark brown wavy hair, steely blue eyes. He calls me derogatory names in front of his girlfriend. She giggles as if he's so clever. Fortunately, they go to a lot of parties, so they aren't around too much. I don't have any friends here. My friend Lynn went back to China. All I do is focus on my studies. I'm in all the advanced courses, majoring in math and physics. My dad died shortly after I arrived here. My mom wouldn't let me go home for the funeral. She said I need to stay and focus on school. Time passes. I've been building something. At nights, when my roommate isn't around, I have labored endlessly on the design. It began on paper as a series of mathematical equations. At last, it comes to life. Tonight, I test it out for the first time. I peek outside the window. A steady rain is picking up. It's time. I hide my project under my raincoat and run across the campus to the bell tower. I race up the stairs to the top and look out the arched open windows at the courtyard below. It's about 40 feet down. I hear thunder rumbling in the distance. My heart pounds with anticipation. I look down at my masterpiece. There's 2 components. One, a small black box that acts as a controller. A small black knob on top of it regulates the flying device. The device is made of metal scraps, pieces from an umbrella, odd rubbish I found around the city. Looking down at it from the top, it looks like a large bow tie. A small round black disc in the middle of it protects the primitive wiring I rigged up. 2 metal triangles are adhered to each side of the disc, like wings. Beneath the round disc is a small dial. I turn it to wind it up. I see a flash of lightning and know it's time. I launch the device out the window of the bell tower into the storm. It glides swiftly through the air. The excitement in me is rising. Using the controller, I try to turn it around and bring it back to me, but it begins to shake and sputter. It falls from the sky and smashes to pieces in the courtyard below. I'm still overwhelmed with elation that it flew. I don't care that it fell and broke. I'll rebuild it again. Next time, it will be perfect. I work on reconstructing it for weeks. My roommate catches me one night and demands to know what it is. I tell him it's nothing and try to cover it up. He scoffs and calls me a loser. but I catch a look in his eye that makes me uneasy. After several weeks, I'm ready to try it out again. I sit at my desk admiring my work. I've made some upgrades. I'm certain this time it won't crash. The black controller box now has 2 knobs on it to move it around back and forth and side to side. There's now 2 round discs with wiring in them, one under each wing of the device. In the center is a deep cylinder which I pour water into. A heavy rain begins to fall. I grab my equipment and race to the bell tower. At the top of the tower, I see lightning in the distance. I turn the dial to wind it up. I launch it out the window and watch it glide. It soars across the sky, over campus rooftops. It goes so far I can barely see it. Using the controller, I bring it back to me. As it gets close, I can see it shaking and sparks shooting from the back of it. It's coming in hot. I can't slow it down. It comes flying into the bell tower with force. I have to duck down so it doesn't hit me in the face. It smashes into the wall, but it's mostly undamaged. It just needs a few minor repairs. I'm absolutely thrilled. A week later, I come home in between classes to finish repairing it. I look under my bed where I hide my work and find it's missing. Someone stole it. My roommate. He's the only one who even knew it existed. I'm shaking with rage. How dare he steal the only thing that is important to me? The idiot doesn't even know what it is or how to use it. I remember that my next class is physics. My roommate is in the same class. I glare at him as I walk into the classroom towards my seat. He gives me a cocky grin. He tells the professor he's made something special and wants to show the class. The professor seems surprised. My roommate doesn't care about school, and it's odd he would go out of his way to do extra work. But the professor indulges him. My roommate struts to the front of the classroom with my masterpiece in his hands. I open my mouth to protest, but decide against it. This might actually be amusing. He tries to fly it across the room, but it falls to the floor with a thud. He looks like a fool. Students snicker at him. The professor rolls his eyes and tells him to take a seat. I'm staring at my masterpiece, laying on the ground. I look outside and notice a storm is brewing. I have an idea. I march across the classroom, pick up my masterpiece, and run out the door. I race across the courtyard to the bell tower. At the top, I look down and see my professor and some students standing in the courtyard watching me. It's not yet storming, but I can feel an electric current running through the air. I turn the dial and swiftly propel it off the ledge. It soars high across the courtyard. The crowd below looks up in awe. A thrill runs through me. I decide to show off. Using the controllers, I weave the device back and forth over the crowd below. Suddenly, it begins to shake and I panic. It can't crash. Not now. Not in front of all these people. Frantic, I bang the controller on the ledge, cursing my stupidity for trying this in front of an audience. At that moment, out of nowhere, the bells in the tower begin to chime. A symphony of gongs erupts. It's almost deafening. Resounding waves of chimes and rings, gongs and clangs, an uproarious performance. I hold my hands over my ears, confused, then notice the device stop shaking. It's gliding smoothly, effortlessly, as if harmoniously riding a wave back to me. It lands gracefully in the bell tower. The crowd below erupts into a cheer. I see my roommate leaning against a tree, scowling at me. Ecstatic, I begin to run down the stairs, but stop abruptly. I have the strange feeling that Lynn is nearby. I can almost feel him patting me on the back. I can almost hear him telling me he believed in me. I look over at the bells and smile. About a decade has passed. I work in a big laboratory now, in the same big city as the university. It's late at night. I'm working alone in my research lab. I take a large gulp of coffee and notice I spilled some on my white lab coat. I try to wipe it off, but just wind up smudging it even worse. In front of me is a control panel covered in switches and knobs, various gauges and calibrators. Above the control panel is a reinforced glass partition that looks into a small room in which I conduct my experiments. I catch a glimpse of myself in the glass. My white lab coat is stained with coffee and food. My hair is wild and unkempt. I look as though I haven't slept in days. The truth is, I haven't. I've been working tirelessly on a new invention, and tonight I put it to the test. I enter the small room on the other side of the partition and place 3 coins on a white table. On the opposite end of the small room, my invention sits on the ground, the manifestation of my genius, my magnum opus. I close the door and sit in front of the control panel. My heart races with anticipation. A bead of sweat drips down my neck. I wipe my clammy hands on my lab coat and turn the levers on. An energetic current flows throughout the small space. Using my controls, I guide the energy. My eyes are fixated on the coins that lay on the white table. They're motionless. I increase the force. A powerful surge of energy ripples through the room. The coins begin to vibrate, rattling on the table. I press on. The hairs on my arms begin to stick up. The coins begin to shake. I accelerate again, testing the limits of my conception. The coins rise, hovering above the table. They convulse. So rapidly the line between physical and abstract begins to blur. My body hums. The intensity in me rises with the coins. I can't believe it works. I adjust the controls, slowly reducing the power surge. Then I turn it off. This is the thrill of a lifetime. Nothing else matters except this work. The first phase is a success. Now I proceed to the second phase, the true test of my mastery. I make some improvements to my model and begin testing again. This time I use a larger object, a hockey puck. I turn it on and begin to guide the energy. The puck vibrates on the table. I increase the flow and the puck lifts in the air. Shaking uncontrollably, I keep waiting for it to happen, but it doesn't. The puck just vibrates, suspended midair. But that's it. The output is at its maximum. There's nothing more I can do. Frustrated, I shut it down. I sit at the control panel, silent for hours, deep in thought. I know my invention will work. It has to. Nothing else matters. I hear a knock at the door and jolt upright in my chair. I look at my watch. It's morning already. I must have fallen asleep. I wipe a bit of drool from the corner of my mouth and try to smooth my hair down. I open the door. It's a colleague of mine. He looks fresh and rested, clean clothes and a chipper attitude. He looks at me with slight concern. He asks if I have some files for him regarding a project we're working on. I nod and tell him to wait while I find them. I rummage through the piles of papers that clutter the room. I turn to hand him the files and catch him peeking through the crack in the door around my lab. He looks alarmed by what he sees. I shove the papers in his hands and tell him I must get back to work. He pauses before leaving. With a furrowed brow, he asks if I'm doing okay. Embarrassed and annoyed by his intrusion, I mumble that I'm fine and slam the door. Who does he think he is, snooping in my affairs? Of course I'm okay. I'm on the brink of one of the greatest discoveries man has ever made. But nobody can know about it until it's complete. I get back to work. I make some more adjustments to my invention and wait until everyone else has gone home to try it out again. I place the puck on the table and commence the trial. The same result. I shut it down and sit in quiet frustration. In a daze of delirium and self-scrutiny, I stare through the glass partition at the puck lying on the table. I'm missing something. I'm so close I can feel it. I'm suddenly struck by the memory of Lynn, of that moment in the bell tower when I felt his presence. The bell tower, the bells, the missing piece. I feel like I've been struck by lightning. "Thank you, Lynn," I exclaim. I know what I must do. I throw my lab coat down and race out the door. I return a bit later with 2 large speakers. I place them in the small room next to my invention and sit at the control panel, bursting with anticipation. I turn everything on. I turn the volume up on the speakers as loud as it will go and begin to guide the energy. A high-pitched frequency blares throughout the small room. The puck is shaking midair. I amplify the energy, push as high as it will go. The whole room begins to rattle. My body buzzes with intensity. I'm waiting for it to happen. Waiting. Waiting. I almost give up. And then poof. It vanishes into thin air. I almost can't believe my eyes. I rub them and look again. I still don't see it. I turn all the controls off and run into the small room. The puck is nowhere to be found. I cannot control my elation. Nothing has ever made me feel this much joy. The magnitude of this accomplishment is mind-blowing to me. I sent a hockey puck to another dimension. But I'm not stopping there. I must press on, move on to larger objects. Next, I use a book, a large, heavy dictionary. I turn everything on and repeat the process. The book disappears. My confidence grows. I determine it's time to experiment with a living being. I remember a stray black cat I saw hanging around my apartment. He doesn't appear to have an owner. He will be the perfect subject. The next night, I sneak into the lab once everyone has gone home with the cat hidden beneath my coat. I place him in the small room and give him a pat on the head. I jokingly tell him I will send him to a dimension where he has a nice home and a family to take care of him. I begin the process. The cat begins to shake. I hear him meowing in protest. I amplify the energy. The cat convulses. Something doesn't seem right. Just as I'm about to scale back, he thrashes around the table, then drops to the floor. I turn everything off. He doesn't move. Panicked, I run into the room. A curl of smoke rises from his body. I electrocuted him. He lays lifeless on the floor. Angry with myself, with my failure, I sit at my desk, wallowing in self-pity. I think of Lynn again. If he knew what I was doing, he would be proud. He would believe in me. He would tell me to believe in myself. I snap out of my pity party. The cat was a minor setback. These things happen. I mustn't dwell on it. I jump out of my chair and look around for something large to try next. The chair. I haul it in the room and place it on the table. It shakes and rattles and hangs in the air, and then in a flash, it disappears. I jump up and down, congratulate myself with a maniacal laugh, and pace around the lab contemplating my next move. I know I'm teetering on the edge of psychosis, isolated in my lab, obsessed with my invention. No friends, no family. Nothing outside of this has any meaning to me. I don't care. I want to try another animal, but I don't want to kill anything else. I stare at the empty white table in the small room. Slowly, I stand up and remove my lab coat. I take off my shoes, remove my clothes, until I'm wearing nothing but my underwear. I adjust the controls to go to max capacity on their own and walk into the small room. I stand on the table and wait. It starts with a buzzing. At first, it tingles, feels exciting, but then it grows to a sharp pain. The loud frequency blasting from the speakers burns my eardrums. My head feels as though it will explode. The intensity is excruciating. I can't control my body. I'm convulsing. My body rises up off the table. I begin to panic. There's no turning back. I think of Lynn. I wish I could see him again. I wonder if he was here. Could he have saved me from myself? And then, everything goes black. At first, absolute darkness. Then, Tiny particles float around me, like dust. I smell burnt flesh. Perhaps the dust is actually ash. Perhaps the ash is my body. Did I combust? Did I implode into a million pieces? Am I nothing but some dust particles floating around a dark abyss? Am I dead? I don't feel dead. This is a strange space to be in. I wait, trying to piece together what is happening. I feel like I'm sitting in a small dark room. I see a tiny ray of light shining in. A keyhole. I peek out. There's light on the other side of the door. It's a closet. I'm sitting in a closet looking into a bedroom. I hear footsteps, the sound of high heels clicking on a wooden floor. A woman walks into the bedroom and begins to make the bed. Through the keyhole, I can see her from the waist down. An orange polyester skirt sits just below her knees. She's wearing pantyhose and dark blue heels. She can't know I'm in here. I sit in silence, still trying to make sense of what just happened. She turns and walks out of the room. I hear her heels clomping down the stairs. I slowly turn the handle and open the door. The light shines in and I look down at my body. I'm a teenage boy, about 15 years old, wearing faded blue jeans and chunky white sneakers. I look under the bed and see a girl hiding in the far back corner. She's afraid of her dad. I inch over and reach out my hand. She grabs hold of it and I help her out. Her blue eyes shift from fear to relief. She gives me a radiant smile. She brushes some dust off her bright red pants and smooths down her brown hair. She grabs my hand and we sneak back into the closet. We're going somewhere, on an adventure, though we don't quite know what to expect. I close the closet door. We sit on the floor. It feels like we're sitting at the top of a huge slide. We sit side by side, holding hands, and shove off, sliding down a long black chute, laughing and squealing with joy. We come flying out of the chute and land in a grassy field. We look at each other and burst into laughter. I take a look around and see that we're at a fair. There's a carousel, lots of games to play, and food stands all around. A huge red hot air balloon sits on the far edge of the fair. We jump up and run through the field. We eat corn dogs and play games. We ride the carousel and play hide and seek. Thick woods line the edge of the field. I stare at the trees and notice a black hole through the tall oaks, like a tunnel, like a portal. I know this is where we go next. I grab her hand and point at the black hole as she shoves pink cotton candy in my mouth. She hops on my back and we race towards the trees and into the portal. It feels like a vacuum, sucking us in and shooting us out and into a gymnasium, an empty basketball court of a school gym. We look around in amazement and crack up at the magic of it all. She spots some square scooters stacked up at the edge of the gym, and we grab two and sit on them, wheeling ourselves around in fits of laughter. When we get tired of scooting, we run through the halls of the empty school, singing and doing an occasional cartwheel. She stops abruptly and gives me a big hug. It's the best feeling I've ever had. We reach the double doors that lead outside and pause before pushing them open. I look at her and smile, squeeze her hand. The doors swing open and we step back, surprised at what's on the other side. The Milky Way sprawls in front of us. Shooting stars whiz by, leaving a shimmering trail of magic in their wake. A crescent moon coasts by, suspended in the stratosphere. The magnificence is too vast to comprehend. We marvel at the wonderment of it all. Then we fearlessly jump, hand in hand, into the unknown. We float around, dazzled by the drama of the cosmos. I spot what looks like a river floating through space, and we somersault across the galaxy until we reach it. Up close, it looks like lava. We hop in and ride the currents. It feels like an epic waterslide ride around the universe. We twist and turn, up and down, winding all over until we land again. I look down and see that we're standing on a cement sidewalk. Something feels different this time. Heavy. Our time together has come to an end. We know we need to part ways now, though neither of us wants to. A red bus pulls up to the curb in front of us. She looks at me, her pale blue eyes brimming with tears. She places her hand on my heart. I place mine on hers. They beat in unison. I brush a tear from her cheek. She gives me one last hug, calls me her heart, then gets on the red bus and rides away. I sit at the bus stop and hold my head in my hands. A river of tears soaks my faded blue jeans. Years pass. I'm middle-aged now, sitting outside on a bench at an ice skating rink. I brush some snowflakes off my head and look around. I see the red bus coming down the street. I jump up, unable to contain my excitement. She runs off the bus and into my arms, a hug that transcends space and time. We skate all day. I spin her around. We fall, we laugh, we drink hot chocolate. Each moment is bathed in perfection. But the sadness creeps back as I know our time together is short-lived. I look over and see the red bus again. She looks at me with watery eyes and hugs me tight. Then she gets on the red bus and rides away. My heart is shattered. I know we can't be together just yet. The time has yet to come. But the pain of being apart is almost too much to bear. Years pass again. I'm an older man in my 70s. I'm sitting on a bale of hay waiting for my heart. Across the field in front of me, a red hot air balloon sits empty. I twist my hands in anticipation. The red bus is coming. It pulls up and she steps off and runs into my arms. Something feels different this time. We're ready. After all these years, after all the waiting, the time has come. We're much older now, but it feels just like it did the first time we were here, like we're kids again, curious, playful, full of life, full of joy, a world of possibility ahead. That feeling never dies with her. I put my arm around her and hold her close. We walk across the field to the hot air balloon. We climb in and light the fire. The balloon begins to rise high above the field below. We look out over the edge. My arm is wrapped around her. She looks at me and smiles. She takes my breath away. My heart, my soul, nothing else matters.
And we're back. I'm Keisha. I'm the facilitator and guide during these quantum healing hypnosis sessions, and I'm joined by my co-host Hillary. She is the writer, narrator, and experiencer of these stories that you've been listening to.
Welcome back, everyone, to Insatiable Madness. Yeah, this is a fantastic, fantastic story. I absolutely love this one.
Mm-hmm.
These last, I think, 4 or 5 that we're about to do, there's just something about them that, like, I can transport myself so easily back into these stories. And they're so rich. It's interesting because I was thinking about this, like, I think it's somewhere around the Maestro, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
In the last couple ones of these, where the stories just become so much more layered.
Yes.
And, the details that started coming through in all of these are, like, incredible.
Mm-hmm. It is amazing to see the evolution of how that works like the details and like they are so very vivid. These
right.
are
So vivid. Especially like the beginning of this one, coming into this one is like, I can transport myself to this beach that this guy is sitting on, and that home with his family, and all of like the smells of the food and the fabrics and the colors and like everything about it is just so beautiful. And yeah, so this one, when I came in, I was sitting on a beach and just like hanging out, and I'm just drawing on the sand with a stick. And I just was like taking the stick and drawing this circle like over and over, around and around. And then I just took the stick and drew like a dot in the middle of it. And to me, that represents like, you know, me in the universe, right? Like the dot is me. And yeah, and then I turn around and there's this elephant there waiting for me to transport me back to my house. And then we get up to my house, and it was just like this absolutely gorgeous villa. Like, I'd like to go and hang out at this place. You know, it's like beautiful, but obviously a very wealthy family. From this house, when I pictured it in the session, literally looked like the Taj Mahal. In my mind, that's kind of what I was seeing. And just like all these like gorgeous like manicured gardens everywhere, and then moving inside of the house was just this absolutely stunning place. And so this boy, you know, in the beginning has this pretty incredible life, I'd say, living in this beautiful place, and he's got like this big family that he lives with, and he obviously is like really into the food. Yeah. That was like a big thing. In this one, the smells of the food when he's trying to creep into the kitchen and snatch some not scraps, but like some little taste from the chef, you know. It's interesting how the food kind of pops up in several of these, and obviously like I'm a chef, so food has been very important for me throughout my life. In this one, that was like a really big thing in the beginning. So the smells and the flavors of everything. And then, of course, when he moves away from home, it's like the lack of that is really disappointing to him. But so, yeah, I think it's interesting to me with this, like, you know, so we start off in this situation where he's got this pretty fantastic life. And obviously seems very important to his parents and his family that he moves away and goes and continues his studies to, like, you know, become successful. That's priority for his parents, and he's really not feeling it. Like, he wasn't really excited about, you know, going to this boarding school, but he didn't really have a choice. So I mean, in my mind, like, he was probably around like 10 to 12 years old at the time that he left. So he has got this pretty great life up until then. And then his parents send him off to what I believe was France. When we were in the session, that was kind of the vibe I was getting. Yeah. And then he's at this boarding school that's just this like dismal, like, to me, it kind of just felt like an old like very institutional, you know, dark, dreary. They all have to wear the same clothes. The food is just bland and not anything that he likes. And he's just kind of like, you know, now switched into this life where all of those things that he loved about his childhood are just completely taken away from him. There's no love from the teachers. There's no, like, really even, he doesn't have that many friends. He only has his one friend, Lynn, at this school. He's like, him and Lynn, I got the impression that they were the only kids there that were not from France. Right. And so he kind of feels like an outsider, right? And, but fortunately, he does have at least this one friend, Lynn. I think that's a pretty significant relationship,
Yeah.
as we will find out. But yeah, so then he's basically gets to the point where he's about to graduate and finds out his parents aren't coming. So he hasn't seen his parents in, like, I'm going to guess 8-ish years since they sent him off there. He hasn't been able to go home. They haven't come to visit. He's excited to have his family finally come. And then he finds out they're not coming because his dad's sick. And then he was like, well, I want to go home, right? I want to see my dad. And his mom's like, no, you need to focus on your studies. And that's a big turning point right there for him. It's like, no, you know, the love from your family is not as important as you becoming a successful scientist, or, you know, whatever their aspirations for him were. And then, yeah, then from there, he kind of, it's a slow and steady descent into madness, basically, for him, as we see. Yeah, then this one was really funny in the session, and then me writing this, like trying to describe this guy's inventions and trying to figure out exactly what they were, because I was like, wait, what?
I know it was really cool. I remember asking you, like, where did you, like, what are these things that you're using? And you were like, I don't know, it's like these broken umbrellas, and like I remember you being like, you know how those metal things in the umbrellas, and you're like, I'm using those. And it was so funny and random, and then you were saying it was like kind of shaped like a bow tie, but it was like a kite kind of thing, but it was very interesting.
It was really hard for me to describe it, even, because I was just like, I don't even know. And then he's got this tube that he's pouring water into. Yeah. And, and then I was like, okay, I built this thing. And then I took it to this bell tower. And there's obviously something significant about, you know, the lightning. And so he always, you know, was waiting for this storm, and it's like, okay, now it's going to thunderstorm. So I'm going to run to this bell tower with this thing. And then I was just like, threw it off the top of the bell tower. So it was like just this like very primitive drone situation. I'm guessing that's what it was. A primitive
drone.
And it's hilarious. A primitive drone made of umbrella scraps. That flies on like lightning. I don't even know. And I'm guessing like this time frame for this one to me felt like it would be like the 1940s or 1950s maybe. In that city that he moved to, which was like, I don't know if it was like Paris, or I have no idea, but it was a bigger city and the people were very cosmopolitan, and he's just kind of this like dork that's just, you know, really obsessed with school and his studies, because that's all he really has. And then he goes there, and then he's got this like douchebag roommate who's, you know, very popular and a kind of a pretty boy. And he's like the total opposite of, you know, this guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like if it's, and judging, like thinking about that time frame that it would be in, I was just like, I mean, I'm guessing like, you know, people weren't really doing much with drone activity at that time, and they certainly weren't flying drones out into electrical storms,
right?
Oh geez. So yeah, writing this one was tricky for me, because I was trying to write it in a way that, as like the listener, you could kind of picture and see what I saw in the session. But at the same time, it was like, I don't even really know what exactly I'm writing about. Like, I don't even exactly know what this thing was. And I don't know that that really matters all that much. It's more about the point of him sort of, you know, throwing himself wholeheartedly into these projects, these masterpieces as he thinks of them.
Mm-hmm.
And this is like his first one is this primitive drone, let's just call it.
Do you mind if I share something here?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, so this was really interesting to me because before this session, we were having conversation and I was sharing with you. This is at the point where we know we're doing this podcast and we're kind of trying to figure out like the format and the presentation and how we're going to put it together and everything. And when we first started working on this, it was like I didn't really see what my purpose was in this podcast, because to me this was your story and like this beautiful thing that's coming, this gift, this is like yours. So I didn't really see my role in it at this point. And I remember coming across this podcast that I was listening to, and I was like, oh my gosh, if Hillary would set her podcast up, if it were like this, like if the format was like this, it would be so incredible. It would be absolutely amazing. And I remember actually thinking, I can't share this with Hillary, because if she does her podcast like this, it's just going to be amazing, and it's going to be another one of those situations where I feel like I have this really good idea and then I don't ever have the ability to bring these good ideas into fruition. And this is kind of like a repetitive thing that happens in my life, you know? And like I feel like that. I feel like I have really good ideas, but then I don't do anything about it, and I don't ever get credit for my ideas. So, but I don't ever see myself as a jealous person. And so I have never really seen myself as a jealous person. But in the moment of me thinking this, I was like, wow, Keisha, you're not even going to share this with Hillary because you think that she could use this to like as inspiration to do something, write this in a really amazing way. And so I was kind of laughing at myself, and it kind of came out of nowhere where I was like actually thinking I wasn't going to share this with you. And so I told you about it right away before we were doing this session. Like I had this really weird jealousy about this beautiful story that's coming through for you. And so while you're in this moment, in this session where this douchebag roommate, when he steals your invention, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm like the douchebag roommate in this session. That's me. That's like me showing up in real time in this session. And because I could feel that from him, and I was like, wow, this is like real time stuff happening in this session for you. It was so bizarre when you started talking about him stealing your invention. I was like, oh my gosh, this is like the type of jealousy that I was truly feeling.
Right. Well, I mean, we've all been the douchebag roommate at some point in our lives, haven't we?
Yeah, and I remember telling you about this afterward, because you weren't thinking anything like this, obviously. And after you were done, I remember telling you, like, I was the douchebag roommate right there. And I remember then you were saying about, again, we shared this before, but the first time that we hung out when we went on that hike and I was telling you about the Tesla stuff, you were thinking, that's really cool, but that kind of thing would never happen for me or whatever. And so then when you started talking about that, I was like, wow, like in this session, this is like Tesla shit right here, you know? And it was just so bizarre. And a perfect example of how everything, this information is coming from all over the place in this incredible way, because I believe that all of these things are like, this is a manifestation of your past lives, collective consciousness, Akashic records, Tesla energy, whatever. Like everything is happening in this very moment. And I don't even understand how it works, but I know that this was the first time where I was like, okay, this is actually real time stuff in this moment showing up in this amazing way.
It's crazy. Mm-hmm. It's crazy. And it's so crazy how they all sort of, like, there's a lesson learned at the time that we do the session for me. And it kind of matches up with my life in a weird way. And currently, whenever we're doing it. And then they also, when I went to write all of these, was coming through at that time and teaching me a different, like, newer lesson, or like I'm looking at it maybe with a different perspective and seeing something differently and able to relate that to my life currently. That's how these work. They just are crazy. There's so many layers to them, like we've said so many times, that it's like every time we come back to them, you find different pieces that sort of match up with my life or new ways of looking at it. Like every time we, before we go to talk about them too, it's like, oh man, a new understanding of what's going on.
Yeah.
Always.
Like this is, like for me, I would have probably not shared that weird jealousy that I had. And, but it was so weird. It was so different than how I normally experience things. Like up until this point, I've been like super excited for you, And so that right. Jealousy was just so weird, and it was so strong. And I think that being vulnerable, allowing myself to be vulnerable and real with you in this moment, is another example of what happens when two people come together and they can be truly vulnerable with one another and have that level of trust that you and I have by this point in doing this work together. It's an example of that too, of what actually can happen, and it becomes very apparent from this point forward. I think that's a huge part, like the trust and the love and vulnerability that when two human beings can be real and honest and vulnerable and trust each other, this magical thing happens. And that's what I think happens from this point forward, which is really amazing.
It is. It is. And like, if I'm going to be 100% honest, like when you back on that hike when we first met, like I was the jealous one in that moment, listening to you talk about all this stuff. And I, like you just said, and I was thinking like, that'll never happen for me. But I was thinking that in a jealous type of way, like,
It's so funny because it's like now you're making these primitive drones before drones even.
I know.
So right. Amazing. Right. It's incredible.
Right. It's hilarious. Primitive drones.
Yeah.
Right. It's absolutely hilarious and blows my mind still when I think about that. Like when I put myself back into that feeling when we were on that hike, and it was like at a point where I was sort of like slowly wanting to feel something more, like, coming from that, there is nothing atheist perspective. Like there was a few years there where I wanted something more. I went to Nepal. My husband and I went on a trek in Nepal in 2018. And I mean, it was absolutely incredible. And we went to some of these beautiful stupas and monasteries, and, witnessed like monks in meditation for hours. And it was like this deep longing within me to want that feeling, to like, but I couldn't understand like how to get there. Right. And because I was still attaching everything that had to do with spirituality to this idea of like organized religion, of Catholicism that I had when I was a kid, even though I knew that there was much more out there. It was just such a weird box that I had put myself in, and like trying to get out of it took a minute, you know. But so when we went on that hike, it was like at a time where I was sort of like longing for something more. I don't even know that I really realized it at the time necessarily. But looking back on it, I can see it very clearly. Like, being in Nepal, I remember one night sitting out, like I had to get up in the middle of the night to pee, and we stayed in these like tea houses. So we're at this tea house at like, I don't even know, 16, 17,000 feet. And it's like nothing else around. And we were in this Langtang area, which is where in 2015 they had that huge earthquake there. And this place was completely decimated. The entire village was crushed. And I mean, almost everybody in that community was killed.
Wow.
And so the place that we stayed in was a new building that they built. And there was a few people that had survived that were running this. And you would think that if your entire village is crushed in an avalanche of rocks and snow, and all of your family is killed, you would maybe have some bitterness about that, you know. But these people were absolutely like just the most peaceful, happy people I had come across, and it was like stunning to witness, and a really great like lesson for me, you know. But so anyways, I go out to the bathroom this one night, and there's for some reason, like I feel like the bathroom was just like this one window wall that like looks out, and you can see all these high peaks of the Himalayas, and the sky, the stars were like nothing I've ever seen in my life. Like absolutely took my breath away. So I'm just like peeing and staring out this window like, holy shit. And it was a moment where I felt something much bigger than myself.
That's amazing.
Out there. Yeah. And then I think we went on the hike just a few months after that. So this was definitely a time period where I was wanting to break out of this trap I had put myself in. So you're talking about this, and I was feeling very jealous. And I think felt like for me, there were a lot of moments in my life where I could call myself a jealous person. And I think that's due to all of the insecurities that I had. Right. So if I'm like feeling really insecure about myself, and I'm looking at other people that have things that I don't have that I want, then there's that feeling of jealousy. And I feel like I've moved past that in the last few years, but that was like how I operated with my business too. It was like one of the reasons, like I had to be the best, because like if anybody was going to be better than me, like I would just be seething with jealousy, you know, and do anything to like make myself the best. It's like really twisted.
But it can be useful, I mean, so like though.
That,
like I'm having this whole understanding right now of jealousy that's so interesting. Like I really didn't have jealousy because I was truly ignorant to it. I just didn't it wasn't like something that I worked toward. It was just I didn't even know any better, you know, from a small child point on. And so that's interesting, because if you think about it, it did the jealousy did benefit you and help you become a wonderful business owner and a successful business owner. So it is useful in some ways.
It can be. Like I've used it, yes, to drive myself forward, because when I've been in places that I didn't want to be in, I was jealous of other people that were in that place, then I would do anything to get myself to that place. I've like moved away from that pattern in the last couple of years. Just understanding and like being happy for people that have things that they have worked towards, whether it's a lot of money or, you know, they're like, whatever it is that I'm looking at with that jealous perspective. It's like, no, I should be happy for them that they have that, and understand that I can have that too.
Yeah.
I just have
And
to,
it is such a
to tune my antenna.
tune your antenna, exactly. Yeah, and I think that if we can kind of just like laugh about it, and like in this case with you and I, at this is what, number 9, I think. So we've spent a lot of time together up until this point in these, other places that we've been, these journeys that you've been bringing me on with you. And so learning a lot of really a lot of really good lessons, and
Yes.
and so if we wouldn't have been accepting of jealousy as a part of what it means to be a human being, then I wonder if this like how this session, for example, if it would have been different. Who knows? I mean, who knows? But I think this was one of the big lessons, because I don't know. This was like a turning point where I really felt like it was showing up to help me in this moment in a big, huge way, and that that jealousy that you're talking about right now in your current life is also, that drive is also very apparent in what you are doing in this. That same kind of drive is,
right.
It wasn't jealousy in the session for you, but it was that insatiable madness kind of thing.
Right. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. I just had the thought of like, so the roommate is jealous of him. And I think everybody can see themselves as that, as that character at some point in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And even though he was, like this pretty boy, and, he had a girlfriend and he went to all the parties, it was like, this guy wasn't jealous of the roommate because of that. He just kind of was like, ugh, gross. Whatever. Right. I don't like this guy. Yeah. Because he truly, all he cared about was, his studies for a while, and then these inventions that he was working on, and everything else was just like outside noise. And I can see, like, I certainly don't think I've ever gotten myself to the place that this guy did, but yeah, I could see pieces of that. Like when I was writing this, even as I'm like racking my brain to figure out some of these things, and I'm up at all hours reading articles, and I mean, certainly I could think of that when it came to writing the Maestro one, the one with the missing piece, where I was just like driving myself nuts trying to figure this out. But so yeah, in this story, he's got his like primitive drone thing, and then there's this moment that's very significant what happens in the bell tower. When he's like, so the roommate steals it and tries to fly it in front of everyone in the classroom. And that was like a really funny moment in the session, because he just like throws it across the classroom and it just like thuds on the floor. And then he's like, sitting there, and he looks outside. It's like a storm broke, and he's like, okay, like this is it. He's gonna show off for everyone. And so he runs out, and then of course people, follow him outside to see what he's doing. And so he's up in the bell tower, and he's got all this confidence, right, that he's going to show off what he's been working on, because nobody besides the roommate had any idea what he's been up to. And he does it, and everybody's like looking up in awe. And then it starts to like shake and sputter a little bit, and he starts to panic, like, oh my God, you can't, please don't crash in front of everybody, and he would be mortified. And this is a very important point for him, because, something happened when those bells started to chime, that like, I just pictured it was like the sound waves, this like resonance that's being put out, and then it was like suddenly this drone, it was just like surfing that sound wave, right? So it goes from like sputtering and, looking like it's about to just crash to the ground to then just gliding on this sound wave and coming back to him. And then everybody that's watching is just like blown away.
It's amazing.
He feels this surge of confidence and, he's like thrilled, and then he grabs it and he starts running down, and just like in the session, I was like, I feel like Lynn is here. Like I felt the presence of Lynn very strongly in that moment. And then, so that whole situation is important moving forward, because I think that him doing that demonstration in front of everybody and having them be like, really excited for him and thinking that it's really cool and it working really well, then kind of like pushes him forward into the future, into the next crazy invention that he becomes obsessed with. So, and that one was like another very interesting thing to decipher exactly what was going on with this situation, because it's like, okay, so he's like, we both just picture him as this mad scientist at this point. Once we skip ahead and he's working in his lab, he's just like the epitome of this like classic mad scientist. He's got this like dirty lab coat on that's like stained and wrinkled, and his hair's all like sticking up everywhere. And I just picture these like wild, crazy eyes, this like no sleep, just basically living in his lab, because he's like doing his weird experiments at night when nobody else is around. Right. It's like nobody in his whatever this laboratory was knew what he was up to. It seemed like he would wait until everybody went home at night, and then he started blowing shit up or whatever. So like, what was this thing? I don't have a clear visual exactly on what it was. It was just this kind of like weird, like engine looking thing, maybe, in this very small room that was like, he could view it through this window where he's got like his control panel on the outside of it. And then, and then I just said like, okay, I'm going to put some coins on this table and see what happens when I turn this machine on. And then they just started like hovering in the air. And I was like, well, that's cool, but that's not it. That's not the end goal here. And then what did I go to next? The hockey puck, which was very, very random.
Right.
I don't even know if it was a hockey puck, but that's just the best way I can describe it. Was this black sort of round thing that looked exactly like a hockey puck. So that's what I called it.
Right.
And then he does the same thing with that. But I was like, man, it's still not doing what I wanted to do. But at the time in the session, I didn't know what it was that I was waiting for it to do. And then I went and got the speakers. Then I had that like remembrance of Lynn in the bell tower. And I got the speakers and then started emitting these sound waves again, this very like insane frequency that's coming, like blasting out of these speakers. And there's just this like crazy electrical current. So like, again, I don't have any idea what exactly was going on technically with any of this stuff. This is way out of my, field of knowledge, but,
I remember
it was like he was trying.
I remember in the beginning when the coins were lifting, I remember thinking that this was like some sort of wind or something that you were producing to make them lift up. I couldn't figure it out either. And I remember you saying, no, it's not. I thought you had the piece of glass between you. You had to be separate because it was like this powerful wind that they could like fly into you and hit you or something. That's what I was picturing.
Right. You're like, wait, they're not flying across the room? I was like,
yeah.
No.
and right. And so you were like, no, it's not wind. They're just lifting straight up in the air. And I was like, oh, wow, weird. What is happening here? So it's some sort of frequency that you're playing with. And yeah, that was very interesting. And then, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
No, you're good. Yeah, because I remember you asking me questions like that, and I was like, no, it's not like anything to do with this force of wind, or that's gonna like shoot them across the room. It was this like, first they were just like levitating,
right,
and then I sent the hockey puck to another dimension, and then that was like, game on.
Right.
It's like, and then I think I sent like a dictionary, some kind of big book.
Yeah.
After that. And then I was like, I need to move on to a living being. And that poor cat, I was like, I know of a cat, a stray cat I can scoop up. And so this is where the black cat comes around again.
And this is very interesting because there was not much emotion in this part. Like, when that cat combusted or whatever happened to it when it died, I was really intrigued that you were just kind of like, oh, that's a bummer, but we're gonna have to just move on. And
right, exactly. That was like the depths of this madness. Was just like, I kind of felt a little bad, but was like, it was all in the for the sake of science. So it didn't bother me too much because I was, and I think, just hell bent on.
After we talked about this one a few times, and we, obviously the black cat was in Egypt also, and so I think we were kind of came to the conclusion that you had already understood. There was some part of you that already understood that the cat is eternal anyway, and so the cat seemed like the most, or the least harmful, or the most reasonable living thing to be put in there, because you understood that the cat was eternal. A part of you understood that. Like, it wasn't that you were like, oh, screw this cat, I don't give a shit about the cat. It was, you had some sort of understanding about it, that it felt like that to me in the moment.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, I certainly agree with that. That on a certain level, he understood that. In this life, though, I think he was, not that he was just like, whatever, screw the cat, but there was definitely not much remorse, or not much like, oh man, I gotta stop. I gotta knock this off. I can't be doing this anymore. This is getting out of hand. And then, no, it was almost just like, ugh, crap. Okay, now what?
But you weren't willing to sacrifice another living thing. Like, you didn't want to do that again. Right. It wasn't like you were just going to go gather all the stray cats and like keep trying it. You definitely after that didn't want to harm another living being.
No, I didn't. No, I didn't. And that's why I was willing to put myself in there.
Yeah.
I mean, that was this descent into madness took me to that place.
Right.
Where it's like, I just didn't care anymore. And yeah, I wasn't going to go collecting all of the stray cats or the bunnies or whatever I could find outside. It was like, I'm just going to put myself in there because nothing else matters. What did I have to lose? Right. This was everything. So you look at this guy and he's like, basically, I don't think had much of any contact with his family since he left. India is where he was. And so all of that love and freedom and joy that he had as a kid was just completely gone.
Right.
And his only friend basically his whole life was Lynn. And he was gone back in China. And so at this new university, he had, no friends. And then in this lab, he's basically got nobody. He's just completely thrown himself into these experiments. And to me, this is like, this descent into madness is like that warm, cozy blanket that he's just wrapped himself in.
Yes.
Where like everything has become so distorted for him. And there's like no love in his life anymore. And that's why like I kept writing in the story like nothing else matters, because that's truly the feeling that I have when I think about him in this place where this is it. This is everything. And if it doesn't work, then he would just be like absolutely destroyed. And so what does he do? He puts himself in the in the weird room. And this part was nuts. I mean, in the session was just crazy.
It really was.
So it was like I could feel the feeling in my body when it's like whatever was happening with the like electrical current and the frequency was just going crazy, and he's like shaking, and my body was kind of feeling that same like buzzing. And
I remember you saying,
you know,
I feel like my
tingling.
head is going to explode. It was like excruciating pain in my head. I remember that.
Right. It was wild. And then there was darkness. And you were like, did you die? And I was like, for a minute, I was just thinking, like, I have no idea. Did I die?
No,
and I was like, I don't feel dead. Like, I don't feel like I'm dead.
Right.
And there, like, when I was listening to the recording then before writing this, it was like a couple minutes where I was just like in that darkness, really trying to figure out what the hell just happened. And I said, like, I think I combusted. And then it was like in the darkness, I could see what at first looked like just little dust particles. And then I think I actually like reached my hand up in the session and was like feeling like moving my fingers, you know, rubbing my fingers together. And I said, I think it's ash.
Yeah.
And I was like, is it my ashes?
I remember I was like, can you smell
combust?
it? And you were like,
yeah, it was so wild.
I think it's me. It smelled like burning flesh, you said.
Yeah. I was like, I think I combusted. But then I wasn't dead, which was like just very strange. And I was really like disoriented for a minute. Like, well, what? And then I was like, no, I think I'm sitting in a closet. And because suddenly it just felt like I was sitting in this small, like dark closet.
Right.
And from where I was sitting, I could see this keyhole, like, you know, the ones that you would use like an old skeleton key. And so there's just like tiny little ray of light coming in through the skeleton keyhole. And then I go to look out of the keyhole, and it's like into this bedroom. And I didn't write this in the story because I didn't want to confuse people, but I do need to say this is like the very crazy thing about this was that was my bedroom when I was a kid. This house that I lived in from when I was probably like, I don't know, 3 or 4 years old until I was like 13 or 14. So some very, you know, like developmental years in my life happened in this house. And so suddenly I'm like, what the hell? I'm sitting in the closet in my old bedroom, like where I used to go and hide with my Teddy Ruxpin. Like, what? Like when I told you that, it was like I instantly thought of Teddy Ruxpin because that's
amazing.
where I would go and sit with him sometimes. And then I hear these like high heels clacking down the wooden floors, like coming down the hall to the bedroom. And then I see this woman, and I can only see her from the bottom down. And she's wearing this like polyester skirt,
orange polyester,
like a burnt orange polyester skirt with like low heels and pantyhose. And she's just making the bed, and she felt like a very she almost felt like an institutional type of character. Like this, like rigid nurse that would come in and make someone's bed in a hospital, right? Like there was not love and safety coming from her. There was just this like almost robotic sense that I got from her, that she was just coming in to do what she was going to do. And then I knew like this, whoever this lady is, like cannot know that I'm just like hanging out in the closet. And then as soon as she leaves, I come out, and there's this little girl about the same age as me. Right. So like, this is the other like crazy part. So I combusted or whatever. and then come into this closet. And then I come out and I look at my body and I'm like a 15, 16-year-old boy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I look down and I've got like the faded jeans and the chunky white sneakers. They like just reminded me of those like big chunky Reeboks from the 80s.
Yeah.
Well, I guess people wear them now again too.
Mm-hmm.
But so I'm this like totally different body. And I'm this young kid. And then I see this girl and she's hiding under the bed because she's afraid of her dad.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe whoever the robot woman was, I don't know.
Well, you could only
so I
ever
just
see
reached
her
my
from
hand.
the waist down, the woman, which was very fascinating.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. No, that's all I could see at first. She just was in and out.
Yeah.
And
like,
and
I
then this
remember
girl
even
comes
asking
out
you
and-
if you could see who she was, and you were like, no, I can only see her from the waist down, which is really interesting because usually if I give a suggestion, you're like, oh, yeah, you know, like you can see it.
right.
But this was
right.
very clear that you were only supposed to see her from the waist down, which I don't know what that means, but it was very strange.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, I have no idea what it means either. But yeah, then I reach for this girl and she comes out and she's not afraid of me. It was almost like she was expecting me in a weird way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like she's like, oh yeah, okay, you're here. And she just like brushes her pants off and then we go sit in the closet together. And it was so weird. We're like sitting there and all of a sudden I was like, I feel like we're sitting at the top of a really big slide.
Mm-hmm.
And then we just go like shooting down the slide. And this begins this like incredible adventure. And this part, like the whole time I'm telling you this part, I'm just like laughing.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I listen to the recording, you can just hear in my voice that I'm just like, what is going on?
Yeah.
But it was so cool.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, we go down the slide and then we land in this like fair and we're running around and there's like hot air balloons and corn dogs and I just have to say this is really, really trippy to me is like, so this, like I have this very vivid image of like landing in this specific place, you know, in this like weird fair or whatever. And I think I mentioned before, I'm currently in Oregon and I'm working on a farm that's having a big festival right now. And I didn't really like notice this until they started, because I got here before the festival started. And so once they had sort of like set everything up, I walked outside one day and I was like, holy shit, this is like the same, looks exactly the same as this place.
So weird.
Like, it's so weird.
So this session was,
So-
would you say, I feel like it has to be like 9 or 10 months ago, right? Or not that long, maybe.
It was not quite that long, but it was when I was in Pennsylvania with you. So it was like maybe like November of last year. And I got to Oregon late February. So it was like, 4 months before I even stepped foot at this place that I had never seen or been to before.
Okay.
I hadn't seen pictures even like of this part of it. You know, I saw pictures of some of the other parts of the festival, but not this area where they have like a few kids rides and they have these stands that have the same kinds of food and just like everything about it's the way it looks, but it's also the feeling that I get when I see it, you know?
So
no, there's no way I could have known, like, it's not like I had the mental image of this.
Right.
Like that's what brought it forth in the session. I had no idea. Yeah. And then, and then we head off so then we're running there and then it was like, okay, there's this portal in the trees and then we go into this gymnasium. And then that was like the gymnasium of the weird Catholic school that I had to go to for a few years. Like everything, like it had the like super 80s vibes, and we were scooting around. I don't know if kids still use those things, but when I was a kid and we had gym class, that was like the best part of gym class, were those square scooter things that you would sit on and just like wheel around like a lunatic. I don't know what the point of them was, but it was super fun. And so then we're sitting on those, just like having a blast, wheeling around this like basketball court. And then we're running through the halls and then we get to the doors and we like open them up and it's just like we're in like it's outer space. And And then we just like hold hands and jump into the unknown, and there's like absolutely no fear. And it's just this like epic adventure. And then we're like somersaulting across the galaxy, like, so cool. And then when we land after that, though, there was a really different feeling that I had. Like, we landed and it's a cement sidewalk, and it had this like feeling of heaviness. And then that red bus pulled up. Yeah. And she had to go. And then we went like fast forward to the next significant thing that happened. And then I was sitting on a bench. And this was like, it almost felt like I was looking, weirdly enough, it almost felt like I was looking at like the ice skating rink in New York City, like in like, what is it, Rockefeller Center or something, you know? And then and I'm waiting for the red bus, and it pulls up, and there she is. And we have that same childlike, like, amazing time. Even though at this point I'm probably like middle-aged. Have this incredible day together. And then she leaves again. And then we skipped forward again, and I was sitting like at that same spot where the fair was, but the fair wasn't happening. But it was like looking across the empty field. And there's nothing there but the hot air balloon. And I should say that at the place that I'm working at now, too, that's the other crazy thing, is there's hot air balloons there. And like
so
one of my
crazy.
first weeks there, they were like, "Oh, did you want to go up in the hot air balloon?" And I was like, "Yeah, duh."
That's so insane.
It's so crazy. And then the red bus comes back, and then we're reunited. And at this point, we're older. I'm guessing like 70s or something. And then we just get in the hot air balloon and like float off into the sunset or whatever. And that was where it ended. And I mean, how crazy was this? Like, just the whole story from start to finish is just bonkers. But beautiful. And so I feel like there's, like, you and I have talked about this so much, and there's so many different ways to look at this as a whole. And I think the most basic one, when you look at the story itself, is that you have this man who's truly has nothing in his life besides these inventions that he's throwing himself into. And he basically drives himself crazy working on these things, to the point where he, like, I don't know, kills himself, combusts, right? Or does he launch himself into a different dimension? And in this new dimension that he lands in, he finally experiences love. Right. Again.
I think it's important I don't think we've explained this part, that before you came in this one, oh shoot, we didn't. Yeah. I think that's important. You want to explain that part when you first came in?
Yeah, I should have said that.
Yeah, that's okay.
From the get-go.
That's okay.
You're talking about like on the grid, right? Yeah, right. So I should have said this at the beginning. I forgot.
It's okay.
So this is like after the when the two lights, became one, and then they go up to the grid, and then on the grid they separated again into two lights to go off and have different experiences. And so we're following one of the lights here, one half of that whole, essentially, into this life. And so this half, has experiences love as a kid, and then it's just taken away from him.
So this is the first time also that you come in with all this love for, you did come in the last one with your family was happy, your mom and dad and everything, but this is the first time where you come in with love, and your family sends you away. Like the last one, your dad is like, he's murdered. And so, but this is the first time that your life is pretty much perfect. But that's the thing, that love is like, those people are saying, okay, we're going to send you off to this other country. And, because these other things are more important than love, basically.
Right. I definitely got the sense that was like, they didn't even really care about me anymore. It was just like, they wanted to be able to essentially brag that their kid and I feel like this is like, unfortunately, a fairly common thing that a lot of people experience, from their families, is this like this push, this like, no, you have to be successful. It's like, I mentioned that, like, for myself, for a long time, I related my worth to my success in my career. And that's how many people operate. That's like part of what, society sort of like, pushes on us. Like, if you're not this successful person, somehow you're not, as what's the word I'm looking for? Like, your value isn't as much if you're not successful. And there's some families that take that to extreme,
right.
Send their kids away and they give them no love. And it's like, if you're not this like prestigious doctor, scientist, whatever it is, then, you're not welcome here, essentially.
Right.
And that's horrible. I mean, I certainly never got that from my family. It wasn't like, if you're not successful, we're going to withhold love from you.
Right.
But I know that there's a lot of people out there that operate like that. And after having this experience in this, it's like, that's so sad. And then, so I look at that, like, he comes from that place where he's just got nothing and he's empty. And then, he basically launches himself into a new dimension where he experiences love again. And
so let's,
it's a little go ahead.
Were you going to talk about the little girl under the bed?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Right. Because I think that there's a lot of different ways to look at who she is. And so, but the way that I look at her when I really try to like examine the story is that I feel like she is like the younger version of me. Right. And, where I was like, not that I was like hiding under my bed afraid all the time or anything, but I was like a pretty fearful child, afraid of disappointing people, afraid of being in trouble, afraid of whatever, not being good enough, all that crap. And then the guy is another version of me that shows up to show her love, and it's like, so then I try to like follow that and think, okay, well, why couldn't they just stay together from the start? Why did the red bus have to come and take them away? And to me, it's like, because there's still like lessons to be learned. There's still things that need to be experienced before, they can finally come together, if that makes sense, But you can also look like, at one point I thought that the girl under the bed was you.
Yeah.
And you thought it was you.
Yeah, I definitely thought it was me. I thought it was me because I was like, and it could not necessarily, I wasn't hiding under my bed as a little girl either, but definitely the same as you, a lot of fears and things, that, as a small child. But I thought it was me because it just reminded me of what we do in these sessions. It's like we go and live our own lives, and then we come together and go on these incredible journeys to unknown places, and then we separate and depart from one another and live our own lives and come back together and go on these. It seems very similar to what we do together in these sessions. So that's why I thought, I was like, oh, I think that little girl is me. But it absolutely also makes sense that is like the child version of your own self, your inner child, or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
Definitely a part of you makes. So I love this because it can be all of those things.
It is all of those things.
It is all of those things.
And we played it for somebody, like one of your friends said she thought it was her.
Exactly.
And I love that. I love that. That's what makes me so happy about sharing these, is that like, I want people to be able to see themselves in these characters, in these situations, and maybe be able to like figure some shit out about themselves. That's the beauty of these, is that it's not just for me. It's not just the evolution of my soul or whatever. These are stories for everyone, where everyone will hopefully see pieces of them in the characters.
And I know we've tried to like, just real quick, I just want to say that with the red bus and the red hot air balloon, I think the color red is super symbolic. And I think a lot of people, the first thing they attribute that color to is love. And,
yes.
I think there might be, like, for me, this attachment to the material world in not quite yet believing that I feel like there's something with this attachment to these two, this is some sort of attachment to the material world. We don't have to get all into it, but I've tried to, like, why is it a red bus? And why is it
why is it a red hot air balloon?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so
to me, it just represented love because that's what he landed in this new dimension to experience.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's probably so many other things that it represents, like you're saying.
Yeah, but it is cool that it ends with the hot air balloon, which is like, it's like leaves this whatever physical earth plane that we live on and goes up into thin air or into the sunset or whatever. I think that's pretty important moving forward too. Like that it ends in that way. It's quite incredible. Mm-hmm.
Truly incredible.
Yeah. Right.
It was like just really, really beautiful. And just really an all around insane story.
Yeah. We were like, what? Really,
yeah. Yes. When I came out of it, I mean, we were just like, what the hell was that?
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what, like, writing it was so fun because I was like, I can't wait to write this, like, how this all goes down. I hope that I captured it in a way where people can really see and feel like what we were experiencing when we were on that adventure, because it was like magical, truly magical. Mm-hmm. And that sense of like childlike fun is something that I crave that. You know, that's something I've realized a lot lately. Is just like, I am a very goofy person and I love to do dumb shit and like act like a little kid, you know, because that's like, it's fun. And why not? Why are we so serious all the time?
Yeah.
You know, and that to me showed up to show me like, no, like embrace that, you know, like dig into that, like have fun. Life, like you're supposed to have fun. Everything's not supposed to be serious.
Absolutely.
And so yeah, it's so funny. Like I'm sitting at, like, when we're at this festival now, like from my camper, I can see they have like one of those really big slide things, you know, that for the kids, like, and I just sit there like, I want to, like, adults aren't allowed on it. And I just think that's bullshit. And I was like, had this one thought one night, like, I'm just going to sneak out at nighttime when like the operators aren't there and just go down the slide by myself.
You for sure need
just
to
like
do
calling
that.
my name. Yeah. Yeah. I'll do it on like the last night, so if I get kicked out, like whatever.
Be careful, you might end up in a different dimension.
A new dimension. Yeah, no kidding. Wouldn't that be wild? Yeah. There's only one other little thing that I wanted to share about this, and I should have shared it before when I was talking about landing in my bedroom, because for some reason this feels oddly significant as relating to, because I was trying to think of like, why did I land in my bedroom? Like that, you know, all of it is just like, just crazy. And so it's like, you know, looking at that younger version of me, like that's what I feel like that girl was, this younger version of me that's scared, that had like a lot of these beliefs that I carried throughout my life were formed in that house. Right. And so, I mean, this was a while ago, maybe a couple years ago. It wasn't long after we did the very first pirate one where I was having another crazy meditation experience, and I wound up in that house, and the house was like empty. There wasn't even like furniture or anything in it. It was just an empty house, and I was just kind of standing in it, and I was feeling all of those feelings that I had as a kid, like the insecurities, the fears, the self-doubt, all of that stuff. I could just like feel it in the air in the house, you know? And then it just started like it was like a huge storm in the house, where it was like almost like these like tornado things that were kind of tearing through it, and the doors were like opening and closing, and the windows are rattling, and it's this craziness that's happening, and it's going on and it's going on, and I'm almost like building it, you know, in my mind as I'm like standing in this house witnessing this. And then I put my hand out, and all of that crazy energy that's swirling around and going crazy just lands in my palm. in this tiny little, like almost like a nice little stone or like a crystal even. And then suddenly, like, I just had, like, I plopped it on like a chain and just like put it around my neck as a necklace. And it was like, I had like accepted or conquered or something with like all of those feelings and all of that emotion that was bottled up, you know, from when I was a kid. It was like it was released and it's swirling around the house and it's going nuts. And then I was just like, nope, okay, I like now I'm in control.
Yeah, it reminds me of Gabriel.
Gabriel, yeah, the maestro.
Yeah, the maestro.
Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, wild shed. Wild shed.
So beautiful.
Is there anything else about Insatiable Madness that we need to mention before we go?
I don't think so. I can't think of anything. I think that's...
I mean, I could talk about it for hours, but I think for now this is good. And maybe this is another one we'll do a YouTube talk about, just because there's more. So
yeah,
again,
there's a lot like
we're gonna say.
I think, you know, like you said, we could talk about this forever, and I think we should do a YouTube video, because there is so many things about the elements and like all of the things that we were thinking about when you were doing those experiments and things, like the elements and things and all the details of the water, the lightning, all of that stuff. But we can save that for a YouTube video, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, we welcome comments and ideas about
absolutely.
Anything. The primitive drone.
Yeah, absolutely.
The girl under the bed. All of it. We love to hear other people's ideas. So please reach out and let us know what you think.
Yeah.
And with that, we'll catch you next week. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. Ciao for now.